If you're somebody who has spent the majority of your life playing through the long-running MMORPG called Runescape, then you are likely familiar with Andrew Gower. If you're not, he was one of the original founders of Jagex with his brother, prior to selling their shares to the blood-sucking investors who played them both hard, making them regret their decisions. They practically lost all of their rights and roles within Jagex as it began to spiral out of control with the investment funds and reselling. I can't say this is really a surprise, it's the result of dealing with them without the presence of lawyers, or in general, when dealing with corporations that are solely concerned with their own financial well-being and the maximization of their own profits, while simultaneously exploiting their employees and siphoning every last penny from their player base. Andrew Gower, for whatever reason, has a resolve to revive the traditional progression style of classic MMOs like old school RuneScape, with brighter shores. Now, as somebody who has played RuneScape for well over 100,000 hours, which is equivalent to the last 20 years of my life, I believe that I possess a deep comprehension of that game both from its past and its present states. There's a great deal that I would like to discuss in comparison to Brighter Shores, as it truly does resemble a fleeting memory and a severe lack of regarding the desires and requirements of players in terms of what the next significant MMO design should be. Why would somebody invest over 100,000 hours or more in a video game that serves absolutely no purpose? Well, it's the same reason you're currently playing the game that you are, whether that be League of Legends, Roblox, VR chat, or Call of Duty Shoot-A-Man every single day of every single hour that you have free time to yourself. There could be a very valid and complex reason behind that, but oftentimes it's because you're addicted to whatever elements that you're addicted to. It's that plain and simple. The reasons for playing RuneScape vary, but the specific subgroup of players are drawn to the game due to the perpetual grind that becomes increasingly grindier as they invest more time into it. It gives you something to do, but even then, the game itself has always been an open adventure that each and every one of us has experienced differently. Originally, I played RuneScape to escape from reality, more specifically from a bad life, and that life really hasn't gotten that much better. But let's just say that I wouldn't be here if not for RuneScape, MapleStory, and many other classic MMOs that I valued my time with growing up because of the community that surrounded it, the friends that you made along the way, the adventures that you went on, and more, not just because it was a static background noise to mess around with. I'm presently unable to identify any interest in Brighter Shores, with the exception of the potential to satiate an impulse in my ADHD brain, which derives pleasure from the prospect of making any significant progress, regardless of how trivial and fruitless it may be. As somebody who is older, I much prefer the AFK side of MMOs while I'm working. I do not engage in the content directly. If a new skill like Necromancy were to be released again, I would likely not be interested in reaching 120 in a matter of days as I did with Necromancy's release. I probably wouldn't even log in. RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape are divided in two. RuneScape 3 is primarily populated by older individuals who are playing the AFK game with a lot of microtransactions and other ways to boost your skills. It's mostly being played in the background, while the only community left is with old school RuneScape, which isn't the community that I grew up with, as it's not the same game that I played growing up. It's pretty hard to explain. You'll know if you know. It's harder to bond with others when nobody wants to, and when you find it, it's extremely rare, especially in RuneScape 3. It just feels like most games just don't have that wonder and charm that they did back in the day because everyone's so much more focused on themselves and wanting not to bother anybody else. Though if you're looking for a community MMO, old school RuneScape would be the most active of the three being discussed here. There's not a great deal to be found in this game currently. You'll follow the story of your player character who is literally being forced to enlist as one of Port's guards, and your role is to do what guards do, uphold order and protect the fort. I want to emphasize that this game will require a significant amount of effort before it ever goes anywhere. The majority of the quests that I've acquired and discovered are all locked behind a lot of grinding, and I don't mean a few minutes or even a few hours. To put it into a better perspective, it took me about 2 hours to reach level 15 in combat, and then 3 hours to accumulate a total level of 60, which was used for the follow-up quest. It gives you a reason that isn't fun to progress the main story and access newer locations, which then adds in more skills to do it again, but also completely reset your character as soon as you leave each chapter. You will grind for levels for the sake of grinding, as well as because you are unable to grind for additional levels without these quests that provide a significant amount of EXP that will satisfy your lack of wanting to do any of these levels individually. Unless I'm missing something, this is just not fun. One thing that I will admit though is that in contrast to nearly every other MMO, I have never been particularly fond of questing. I actually enjoyed the questing in Brighter Shores, and as a dialogue skipper, I took the time to follow along, listening to the dialogue and completing the quests in the manner in which they were intended, without the assistance of guides. But even so, the rest of the game is pretty barren. So going back a bit, if you don't understand what I mean when I say the game resets your character, let me show you directly. So in Brighter Shores you have skills, which are linked to chapters that will be revealed over time. The idea is that you want to max out these non-rewarding skills, killing some monsters, gathering resources, and getting stronger equipment to fight the higher level things and gather more nodes. Assume you spent approximately 40 hours specifically in Pawkt for whatever reason. You increased all of your skills, became extremely strong, not that you really ever do become strong, acquiring all of these new gears, and eventually proceeding through the game with the next location. Alright, you're finally here in the next chapter of your adventure. Now, do what you just did in the exact same way, and you know those items that you gathered along the way? Yeah, you can't use those things anymore. You can only use them in the previous location. So go ahead and start over from scratch, or go back. Repeat the process. It's like adding a new Iron Man restriction to yourself in old school RuneScape, locking yourself in Lumbridge until you get a total level of 50, and then unlocking Draenor, and then continuing the grind, but each time you unlock a new location, you cannot use any of your items, skills, or bring anything with you from those previous locations, making it feel like the ultimate restricted hardcore Iron Man. This game is tailored for that kind of experience, but with none of the community or creative fun. I don't think I'm missing anything else here. I really tried to ride this out. It really doesn't get better. Brighter Shores tries to cater to both players who can play for many hours non-stop and also for those who can only play for a few minutes or a few hours a day. I've played the game for 8 hours and I found it to be quite enjoyable in a weird, non-enjoyable way. This is the same feeling that you'll get from RuneScape or any other games with numbers that increase. While it is a free game, it also has a monthly fee that unlocks the rest of the game, like trading with players and also other locations that will be unlocked as chapters get released. Most of that content is not even released yet, so you're not really paying for much here. Yeah, it's pretty hypocritical to state that I'm actively wasting my time here given my prior experience with RuneScape, however, allow me to elaborate. Check out this UI. It's clearly designed for mobile devices rather than PCs, and you cannot say that it isn't. And every skill and form of combat in the game has a uniform feel outside of ranged combat, which is actually limited to 3 to 4 ammo per fight, and also restricted behind a level 15 requirement. So once you do level up to level 15 in that specific skill, you spend another handful of hours doing the exact same thing in another skill that has a different name with the same feel. Do you know the definition of insanity? Because that's basically how it feels. All you're doing is using your gathering skills for a way to make some extra money early on and some potions to maybe help you with combat, but you don't really need that. It has a very old school RuneScape feel to it when it comes to actually going out, gathering the materials, and putting them back in your bank. Once you hit level 20, that grind really starts to get drawn out, where the EXP decreases significantly, and this is where they push you onto their next prospect. Knowledge points. They're trying to sell you on the idea of this chapter system, which basically is trying to make you focus on your level 20s and then slows it down significantly, boring you enough to attempt other skills that are not level 20 yet, in order to get faster EXP increases and then get more knowledge points, which can be utilized for AFK abilities and raw EXP boosts on skills that are currently above level 20. So basically these are accumulated in any of the chapters and can be used on any of the other chapters that you are actively participating in. You'll play doing whatever it is that you're doing and eventually be granted a point that can be put into bonus unlocks for EXP, AFK content, and silver. And wouldn't you know it, most of this is locked behind levels, so you'll be using a good chunk of this on bonus EXP rather than all of the unlockable content. This basically means that you're being rewarded for both casual and sweaty gameplay styles, but it's just another way to keep you grinding and coming back for more of that absolutely pointless grind. You are significantly restricted by the level progression. In RuneScape, it makes sense because you can still go out and fight things higher level and still get rewarding drops. You're being forced to play in a very highly linear manner with Brighter Shores doing any number of activities. I have to stay at the screen constantly clicking multiple times every couple of seconds to continue moving and doing specific things to gain more EXP, and then head to a new location. If I wanted to do this, I would just play old school RuneScape, because at the very least there is actual things to do outside of that while still being rewarded in that specific activity. Take gear drops for example. Sometimes enemies will drop gear, which can be used to enhance your strength in order to confront higher level creatures in that specific chapter. However, if you attempt to fight anything beyond your current level and retrieve any of the dropped gear, you will be unable to compare or examine any of it until you reach that specific level. This is once again the recurring linearity, slaying creatures of your current level until you reach the next level, waiting until you have better gear before moving on, and then upgrading your equipment for the next creature until you can upgrade your equipment for the remaining creatures. I've played the game long enough to understand this. This game system is absolutely trash in its current state. This is not rewarding, and I could care less if the argument is it's in early access. You know what other game was also in early access? Ethereal Echoes of Yore, which felt more like a classic trip through the early 2000s, and the game got completely steamrolled by their blatant disregard for servers and monthly payments that was an active scam. But the big thing here was that that game actually felt rewarding and fun to play, as short-lived as it was. It's like you're being treated like a robot, meticulously doing the exact same thing over and over again, but you get nothing out of it. You're just sitting there watching your character do the exact same task and the exact same slow animations. You can gather, forge, fish, and fight all you want, and call it whatever you want to call it, but this does not resemble anything that is genuinely fun. Like seriously, where's the community, the content, the adventure, and the freedom? I could go on and on about retro MMOs like Fly FF, Eden Eternal, MapleStory, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Wizards 101, Terra Rising. They were all built to provide you with some form of entertainment rather than being another list of things to complete in order to scratch that static itch in your brain. I was never really enjoying myself. I do not perceive this as an MMO, rather it appears to be an attempt to emulate one, and it really does feel like Andrew Gower is clawing for any leverage to go back to how things used to be before he sold his rights away. It's not 2006 anymore. It feels like it hasn't had enough time to figure out what goals it wants for the future. Having spent an unthinkable amount of time with RuneScape while also making a lot of fond memories and spending countless long, cold, and dark nights running through Gielinor, PKing, killing bosses, and being surrounded by an active and helpful community, be that through YouTube, the Wikipedia page, and more, helping out each other with levels and skills among other activities, you had the sense of freedom to do whatever you wanted whenever you wanted. Brighter Shores is devoid of any sense of community. You can see all of these players moving around to each location while they are playing, but it just gives off the impression that they're all bots even though you know they're actively playing, making it feel very weird. It's just unlikely to receive a response from anybody at all, even if you're engaged in chat, because once you leave the area you're in and then enter an instance location rather than being an open world, you're not going to be in the same place as them and your messages will not come through. So you kinda just say something and it goes unheard, and even if it was heard, you'll probably never see them again unless you added them. That being said, you can't even examine people or really engage with others at the moment. If you're a helpless old school RuneScape fanatic that finds the more severe scale of hardcore Ironman and restrictions fun, then this may be a good game for you. Though I don't have much faith for the future of this game. I wouldn't say it's because I'm biased towards the idea. I have plenty of old school RuneScape and RuneScape 3 friends that actively are playing this game for hundreds of hours and even spent money on the monthly fee, but I just don't see the real point.